Hi, I'm Milla and welcome to another Milla's Game Room video. This one is going to be about the masterpiece known as Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which I recently finished, but I took a step back away to think about it more before I made this video, and it's going to be interesting. So this is going to be like a extended review ramble-ish thing. I'm going to try to keep this one spoiler free, and I might do a more spoilery one in a separate video, so that's just a heads up there. If you want to subscribe, comment, etc. and to see more videos like this, that would be great, really would appreciate it. And so let's begin. So for me, basically this game was wow, that's basically just wow, that's how much I love the game, and that's my overall thoughts on it in one word, and it's really hard to elaborate on that. So for me, that was why I chose to step back, so I could process everything, especially after you spend 90 hours of your life with a video game that sucks you in and it hooks you in so well. It's really hard to get out of the immersion once you're out of it, and it's gonna be a bit difficult to adjust to other games. And that's basically all just sitting there and wondering what you're going to do with your life now you finish this masterpiece. And so now I'm a bit more gathered, I've tried playing other games, now I can talk about it. So this game is a lot of people probably know what it is, but I'm going to give a brief summary now just because a lot of people won't know what it is, especially if you don't really follow RPGs or mainly play on other platforms. This is the third game in the Xenoblade Chronicles series, which is part of the wider Xeno series, so they're kind of interconnected, but this whole Xenoblade arc is basically standalone. You don't need to play the other two games to play this one, although there will be references that you will miss out on, which really enriched it for me as someone who played the previous two Xenoblade Chronicles games in terms of the story-driven ones. Because there's also Xenoblade Chronicles X, which I've not played but is relevant, so I will talk about how that game impacts it on it briefly. So this particular game is set on the continent of Aeonios. Well, not continent, it's the world, but it is basically a massive continent where the characters are the world. It basically combines the first and second games together. So you get this really vibrant atmosphere of things features from those two games, as well as all new stuff, which is really difficult to describe in a nutshell. But it's called Aeonios, and the world is set where you've got two sides, which are called Keves and Agnes, which are in a state of endless conflicts. You have all these people that are basically born from born from embryos, if that makes sense. Except you actually see them in capsules, so it's kind of not like an embryo, and it's for 10 years, and they're already a child when they start. And then when they pass on after 10 years, they're basically a young person, so it's very different, and that's what the characters are. They don't know that yet, and that is something that was included in the material. And then finding out about it does happen in the game, so it's not really a spoiler, but that's kind of the setting. So all they know is war and conflict. And then after a mission, you've got the 6 main characters. They meet during this mission, then stuff happens, and then they become Ouroboros, which is basically you need to use this power to save the world, but now everyone's going to be after you, including these evil beings called Mobius, which are, well, you encounter them quite quickly, which is a very fateful encounter. And a lot happens, so that's kind of the crux of the story. So I'm going to talk briefly about these characters, because with these 6 characters, unlike most RPGs, you meet all these characters from the very start, so no additional characters join the core 6 later on. You can unlock more characters and stuff as you go through the story that can be an ally, which you don't control, but they're you can drone them in and out, which is going and getting a bit ahead. But in terms of the core 6 party members, they're all fixed. After 5 to 10 hours you see them, and then that's it, you've got your core 6 party. Now onto the characters themselves. I mentioned the core 6 before. You've got now. I think first off, before I put the characters, I do want to kind of praise the game for having a more racially diverse cast of characters than you normally see in RPGs, even compared to the previous 2 Xenoblade games. You've got and I think it's cool. You've got 2 characters that are not white, and another one which is like from a different like skin colour you normally see in fantasy games, and which I really think is so cool, and like huge props for that. Especially because like it also combines elements from the first two games, because 3 of them are from Keves, which is the Xenoblade 1's world basically, and 3 from Agnes, which is basically Xenoblade 2's world. So you also see those incorporated in the character designs, like cat ears and rainbow hair that's blue, or angel wings, and those kind of things. And also the blue skin colour as well for one of the characters, and also the other NPCs in the world as well, which is so cool. So I'm going to pair them into 3, because in the game, which you've seen promotional footage, you'll find that with the Ouroboros mode, you've got 2 characters that combine into 1. That's done like 3 times through the core 6, so it's like, I'm going to pair them, so like Nora and Mio, first 2 pair, the main pair, and then Time and Uni, and then Nans and Senna, which are the other 2 pairs, which I'll go on to. And obviously the first set is like Nora and Mio, they're like the highlights, they're like, as I mentioned, like, the story in many ways is basically about them because they're the 2 main characters. And although kind of Noah has more of like a centre role compared to Mio, because with Noah you start playing as him and the Keves lot first, which is really like interesting. Like about Noah himself, like he reminds me a lot of Shulk, like very like dependable, level-headed, like can be very serious but also very like loyal. And I think loyalty is a cool theme as well, like of all the characters. But and if what makes Noah's case unique is that Noah is an Offseer, so basically in that world when people pass in battle you got to play the flute, and then those people are sent off to like, it's basically kind of like, it's basically that world's equivalent of a funeral, if that makes sense. And you've kind of got that vibe, and Noah's like the more like the leadership character as well, so like Noah's basically de facto the leader, if that makes sense. And then you've got Mio, who's like also an Offseer, but for Agnes, and I think one of the more cool things of Mio's route is like, because Mio's similar as well in terms of being more like mature and level-headed. Also, at the start of the game, you encounter like, she's like 3 months before the end of her 10 years, and then after those 10 years, she would pass. And that's what you're presented with, so the theme of like, preparing for the end of your life, and an urgency to want to get the task at hand done before those 3 months is very much there, and that's very much a key arc of her character, and it's hard not to sympathise with that. And it's really well written how like the characters evolve, those 2, and then because they're also like, you kind of see early on it's kind of the start of like the like a relationship building, because that is something else that happens throughout the game, and you kind of see that very early on, so it's not really a spoiler. Especially like when you first meet them, and then the connection starts straight away, and that's something that like really like brings the group together, and I really like that. It's also worth mentioning that like all the 6 characters, you can get side stories in the game, and for Nora and Mio's you have to complete them as part of the main story, and especially with those 2 it really like enriches the experience for like not just those 2 but like all 6, but because you're playing them by default it kind of really helps even more to like tie up the story a bit with all the loose ends, and also with character development too. It's also worth mentioning now that there are also side stories with all 6 characters that are side quests, but with Nora and Mio they're actually part of the main story. You have to beat them to advance the main story, and that's not a bad thing, but it also like shows like how much of like main characters they are that are integral to the experience, and that was cool. Very much an authentic connection that's very much not forced. And all the other characters have side quests too, in terms of like what's called a side story, which you have to like, they are missable in terms of like you have to go out your way to beat them, but all of them are worth doing. But I'm getting ahead of myself again, but that's how good this game is. Like, next pair is Tyon and Uni, and Tyon is like the cool and collected but more like serious, if that makes sense, like someone who's like the skeptic. Like initially Tyon's like very much the most, oh we're not doing collaboration, very enemy kind of thing, like very much more instinctively hostile. It can be a bit awkward, but like you kind of see as time goes on like Tyon means well, and that's really like, it's really charming actually, and I really liked it. And yeah, it's just like, you just kind of see this new sense of like kindness, but also like, oh, this guy just means well. It's just kind of difficult to understand in many ways, and it kind of get the social awkwardness, and that was one reason I found Tarn's character at first quite jarring, because it's like, oh, this guy's awkward, but it's just, oh no, it's part of the character. It's actually quite nice, and that is another theme as well I found with another character. But as for Uni's basically very laid back, kind of like in many ways the opposite of Tyon, but complete with like very British slang. Like, I live in the UK, unfortunately, but that does mean I'm quite familiar with a lot of the localization choices in terms of the British accents, because yes, I played this game dubbed, because if you're going to play a game like Xenoblade, you play it dubbed as far as I'm concerned, because the dub is fantastic. That's because most of it isn't American, which is actually also going ahead of myself again, but you know, that's fine because the dub is great. But it means with Uni you hear things like, says her name, like leave it to Uni, for example, and you kind of like, it's really laid back, and it's like, it adds a lot more to the character. Like, it's the kind of thing you typically associate in the UK with a more working class background, and I think that really like adds more to the depth of the character, because especially in this world where you don't get social class. I mean, which also makes it ironic, because in the original Xenoblade 1, a high Entia, which is where her wings come from, it's basically, they're very posh, kind of similar to the upper classes of British society, if we're going to do that comparison again. But it means that it really helps a lot, and I like that a lot. And it's a nice little juxtaposition, they get close, and hearing these like opposites attract and opposites develop a really like strong sense of companionship is so cool. And then you kind of get Lanz and Senna, and both of them are like, they're into fitness, both very like physically strong, and also like kind of cool. Like, well, they're all cool, but like, Lanz, it was like, I didn't like Lanz at first, and that was because like a lot of Lanz's like personality is like abrasiveness. It can be quite, it can be like, you what mate, that kind of thing. Like, that's very much a thing. Like, another thing, like being in the UK, I know what kind of background that is, and trying to adjust that and trying to deal with that is just kind of like, I found it quite, no thanks. But then it's like, you see over time, it's like a sense of like loyalty, compassion, and getting ready to punch the lights out of these enemies, and just seeing the complexity of his character develop, especially during his side story, and seeing that, oh, his guy means well, he's actually really nice, and just like having this like very tough exterior, and it's just like really cool. Yeah, I'm just trying not to just put everything into words right now, because that's how good some of these characters are. Like, I'm probably not even doing them all justice, but it's the kind of thing where if you play the game, you will understand these scenes where these characters can really develop and interact with each other, and you can see their personality start to show, and that includes with both the voice acting, the subtitles, and body language as well. It's very much a more subtle sense of storytelling, which is really nice and refreshing. It doesn't have to be explicitly spelled out, but the way the camera stuff is cued and that, it's obvious what the implication is, which is one reason why it's really hard to like not like these characters by the end of the game, and that's a real plus. And the final combination is Senna with Lanz, like also fitness, and another theme of Senna is like low self-esteem and self-depreciation, which does like become more apparent that that's something that she's a character struggles with. But also like as time goes on, like you see like a more like very laid back persona, and very like it's just like, it's so cool, and it's like easy one of more likable characters as well. But also with Senna, it's like a sense of like optimism and like, let's go, let's get this done, and just the overall like loyalty to her friends as well, which is really nice, because you like playing this game, you really see the characters bond and have to like unlearn a lot of what they've internalized, which is like the core main theme. Like, you get enemies to besties and then to lovers, which is so cool. And we're not quite lovers, but you can tell like all of them have developed those really strong connections to each other, especially because they can have the Ouroboros power, and they all can combine together into these characters, and you can see their inner thoughts as well. And a lot of the overarching themes include things like grief, and having to like remembering those who've fallen in battle that they were alongside them, so they're mates, and that's just one of many things you see. So that's how these characters in the game partly develop such a deep connection, which I really, really like. And that's just so cool that you can just like have this huge multifaceted development and have this like develop this deep understanding, and then it just goes from there. Yeah, and then it's before mentioning all the NPCs as well and the other allies you can recruit. Like I mentioned earlier, there was a whole, you can add a seventh person, and that can be unlocked through side quests, which means they've got their own like hero quest, which is what it's called. You beat the hero quest, you can recruit them, and they'll agree to join you. And there's so many really good ones. Like, I'm trying to remember, because a lot of them are like, some of them are like playable at first, but you don't always know they are until later. If that makes sense. And others, there are 2 spoiler classes you can only unlock in the post game as well, which I'm not going to name those, but if you know, you know. But also things like, the first one's like Ethel, which is like a very like strong, dependable like character. Commander, which is cool, which like usually tends to be commander characters that you recruit as well. And then you've got like just so many, got mixture of like guys and gals, and from all different places and backgrounds. And it's just so cool because many of them will also incorporate things like attacking, defensing and healing. And the other thing as well is you can also like inherit their class as well as part of the whole like Ouroboros system, which I'll get into a bit more later because that's a whole other topic for itself. But all the characters are great, their personalities really shine, and it's like their particular quests as well, the hero quests, as well as the side stories. They have really good voice acting, some of the best scenes in the game, and playing them really enriches the experience as well. And you can skip most of them, but you want to get the full experience, especially because a lot of them will also like lead to hidden areas you couldn't access before, as well as some great boss battles, mainly with the antagonist Mobius. And Mobius are like, they're basically the enemy. They are, well, basically the whole, they run the world, they control the world, they are the true enemy. And so basically it's like, they become Mobius' enemy, and so Mobius is going against them, and these like powerful demons, that's basically what they are. And they also duel as like the consuls, which are basically the runners of the colonies, which represent Chaos and Agnes, which are scattered all over the world. There's originally like 15 to 20 of them, I think, but over time, as you go through the game and start battling them, over time you will kill them. And it's pretty fun to see these people that are basically very, like, a mixture of like quirkiness, sadisticness, seriousness, and also like, oh, this is gonna be so much fun! And then you just transform, attack them, and eventually they die, and it's funny and satisfying to watch them shrivel and die after all the evil they've caused. And yeah, that's some of the most satisfying quests in the game, as well as the main story where relevant, because yeah, you will be fighting Mobius in the main story. Even the first encounter with a Mobius is a boss battle, but that's like a few hours in, so again, not a spoiler. But you know, it's just great with these thrills, and it just adds up, and over time the story culminates. Over time, like, especially when you get to like the last few chapters, like chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7, the last parts of the game, the story just gets even better, but it always starts off strong. It's not like Xenoblade 2 where the pacing's off, but with this game it always feels like perfectly paced, and over time the mysteries of the game slowly start to reveal themselves, such as how the worlds of like Xenoblade 1 and 2 tie into it, which is one of the biggest like marketing stuff about the game, which is so cool. And then you've got things like, as well, like the characters, how the world changes, and how you just over time you go to these colonies and you end up like turncoating them so they join your side and understand themselves, the trueness of freedom and choosing your own destiny, which are other core themes of the game, because here you are like going out on this quest to put the world right, and so people, instead of being forced into endless conflict, can have a world of peace and choose their own destiny, which is just incredible, especially when you see how these like characters change, and accompanied by great voice acting, a great localization, and other things like that. As for the world itself, which I mentioned earlier, it's beautiful. You have like settings from like vast plains to deserts to a massive sea. You have landmarks in the first 2 games scattered throughout. Like for example, the destination you initially have to go to, which is called Sword March, is actually the sword from Xenoblade 1, which if you've played the game you'll know there's 2 like bonus and Iconis, and there's a sword that pierces one, and that's the sword basically. And then you've got other things like the Urian like tunnels, which is basically the inside of the Kingdom of Uriah in part from Xenoblade 2. You even get things like the ruins of Fonza Minor, which you have to go through, which is really cool, which is basically the settlement of Fonza Minor from that game. And other subtle things as well, like there are some like more obscure ones that are harder to work out. One of my favourite is in the Fornis region, which is one of the earlier regions you go to. There's a secret area that's basically called the fingertip of the arm, and if you go up there it's basically identical to the Fallen Arms area from Xenoblade 1, and it's very subtle and hard to miss if you've played the game. If you haven't, no, it's still a fantastic little curious. Go up there and explore this massive map, and you can see all over the desert and the plains, and even there the grass into the right is just amazing. It's just so fun to explore. Like the map is very open-ended. It's basically almost open world. Like Xenoblade X was a fully open world map and you could go pretty much anywhere. Xenoblade 2, Xenoblade 3 isn't quite as open, but it doesn't feel constrained. Like there are quick loading times between all the areas, but it doesn't feel constrained like that at all. The world maps are large. You can easily spend like hours just exploring the map and mapping everything, and that's basically what I did. I spent all the time just going through this game's map, running around, filling all it in, and finding these hidden areas. Like Danar Desert, for example, is an early area in the game that you can go into like without having to come back later, which is also a thing for other regions as well. Like you could just walk around this massive desert and these other areas, and like again, if you only want to do the main story, you don't have to go in it at all. But if you want to get like side content and stuff like that, you gotta go in Danar Desert and other places and just go around, defeat these enemies, and like find things like the unique monsters and stuff. It's just fantastic. It's just so cool. And I just love the fact I spent hours like having my TV there and just having these areas, go around in them. It's just beautiful. Like legitimately one of the best looking games I've ever played in my life. And the art style in general is also really good. I'll talk about that briefly as well, because again, like the visuals, like it looked good. Like I played the game docked, although I did try it in handheld. The game is like looks great. The art style is kind of a blend between the first 2 games. Like it's not as anime styled as 2, which did draw some controversy, and it's not quite as realistic as the original version of 1, but it's kind of in the middle and it looks great. Like, and it really fits it as well because it's just so nice, and the world is like, again, so much colours, so much variety. There are some visually stunning areas as well. Like I found some of them, and well, basically everywhere's stunning, but there are some that really take it to the next level, especially when you're at night as well. Like another one is in the Fornis region. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's the same place where you can find and climb up to the fingertip I mentioned before. And that area at night, you have these massive plants that glow. It's so cool, and it resembles kind of like, I can't remember what it's called, but like in Xenoblade 1 there's a certain area where you go and at night it just becomes from a swampland to this visually stunning beauty. And it's that kind of thing you see through the game, and it's just incredible, and it's really nice, and it truly sucks you in, and I really like that. My favourite part of the world though would be Erythia Sea, which is in the Cadencia region, which is later in the game, and this is basically, you get a boat and you're able to basically play Xenoblade but with a boating mechanic and go out on the sea, and you can go to all these islands, go there, pick up things or travel around. It is so beautiful. Like, it is a jet probably my favourite part of exploring. You go out onto the open sea and you go through this massive map, as well as the objectives. You've got so many little optional islands with things on it, like other side quests and stuff. There's also a couple of colonies there as well. You just go around, it's legitimately incredible. And you could easily spend like 10 plus hours just exploring the map there on your own and doing quests. Like, there's just so much hidden stuff there. And I just love the feeling of being on a boat and just riding that, especially at night when you get the Aurora summers, because Aurora show up there as well, and it's just incredible, and I just love it. And it's moments like that that go, Holy fuck, this game is beautiful. And then there's the music as well, which I'll touch on music as well before I do gameplay, because I've not talked about gameplay yet. Music, absolutely beautiful. It's much closer to the first game than the second in terms of the music, but that's actually fine. Like, if you're gonna have the game playing, like, you just have these absolutely beautiful like exploration overworld themes, and it's just like having the background. It's just so relaxing to listen to these overworld themes, and it's just so nice. Just playing his world, and then the battle music's great as well. You get loads of battle themes as well. Especially like you get a standard battle theme, especially when that switch between the world as well. And then you've also got like boss battle themes with Mobius, which is fucking incredible. And then you've got variations and remixes, including from previous games, which I'm not going to spoil those here, but they're also fantastic as well. I love them. Yeah, and then of course you've got event scenes, which are also quite nice. And yeah, I want a soundtrack. Give me a soundtrack, please. I know one's going to come eventually, because we need to record it all first, because I mean, it's got like over 100 tracks. This is fucking massive. This game is massive in terms of its OST, and in content in general. In terms of gameplay, it's again like, compared to the first two games, like it's very much a hybrid between like action and turn-based, if that makes sense. Like you just like go out and you can auto-attack, where you can do commands and stuff, and auto-attacking like builds up the gouges and that, and then be able to like use the skills, or then there's the mechanics for the Ouroboros, which the standard battle system compared to like the previous two games is the most easiest to understand, because one of the flaws of the Xenoblade games is the fact that the battle system can be really complex and systems heavy. And with Xenoblade 3 is still got some systems, but they are introduced subtly over time. So things are deliberately like not made available for you at the start of the game, and it actually helps it feel a lot less overwhelming. Like for Xenoblade 2, I could barely do any chain attacks because I just didn't understand what the hell was I meant to be doing here. Whereas Xenoblade 3, it's like, it's a lot more simplified. It makes it a lot easier to understand, to the point where I was doing chain attacks in like basically every battle against the boss, which is really good design when you simplify it like that. And in terms of like characters, you can also get the cast that can do things, and then build the chain attack. The additional like 7th party member can also contribute of their own, and those effects are beneficial, and you can basically mix around and experiment with that kind of thing. And you can amass tons of points as well, defeating strong enemies as well, which is so cool. I clocked 1 million. I know some people have actually clocked over like easily 10 times that amount, because you know, people were like, oh, let's break this game. Well, that's not a bad thing, because you know, it takes a lot of skill to do that. And as for the Ouroboros, it's basically you can customize each other's classes. So at the start of the game with the core 6, when they gain the power, it's like, oh, we can now take over each other's classes. So people like attackers can become healers, healers can become attackers, and defenders can be whatever, and all loop their own for everything. And that's basically what that is, and it's so freaking cool, and I love it. And it also increases when you recruit more people as allies. You can inherit their classes as well, and then you can spend time leveling up and fighting enemies and then switching them around. And over time you'll just be having your party members change classes, and you can like have that as well and have them all move around. And it's incredible. Like it really it's customization but good, basically. It's simplified enough that you can get into it easily, but complex enough that it will last you a long time. Especially if you're wanting to like go tackle the really, really strong enemies. Like there are definitely like really strong areas of the game you can't go to. Like a couple of like hidden caves of like level 90 enemies, and really like strong enemies. Like the strongest 5 enemies in Ionios, which is like post-game content. We've got 5 like massively bosses, and the highest one's like level 120 or something, which is ridiculous. One time I actually found one of these monsters. I was in the sea and I managed to find this hidden area, and oh crap, there's this massive dragon that's now attacking me. Fuck. So yeah, that was fun. But that would be just so many incredible experiences in this game, and like having like the fun. Oh, and what I will say is when you fight the unique monster theme, because unique monsters are back, you can fight unique monsters, which are basically like, you defeat them, you get a grave, which you can walk back to, but also you get to listen to this badass remix of You Will Know Our Names, complete with a climax theme, so when it gets to a low HP, you now hear a remix version, which is so cool, and it's just incredible. Yeah. Anyway, I've been here for about 30 minutes now, so I need to hurry up. Things like quality of life improvements, so things like you've got pointers on the map like exclamation marks for your quests, so whatever quest you're on you can see where you've got to go. Question marks on the map show where quests and that can be activated or events relating to side quests, so yeah, do that. You also get prompts like I when you want to get information for people, which you can talk about rest spots. You can also get a automatic path, so like if you're terrible with directions in games you can just go, I need to work out where I'm going, can you help me please? And you set the toggle and it shows you a path, so you follow the path when you get there, which is really cool, and I think that helps a lot for accessibility, and I wish that was in the previous games. Like things like another quality of life improvement, the blade system is gone, so as it is, the Ouroboros is in its place, so you don't have to do gacha mechanics to get the blades. You also can, like, it's easy to make gems because the gem crafting has been simplified, so basically once you make one variation you don't have to make it again, and you can level it up from 1 to 10 and other things like that. And then you finally get to like, and onto a few things that I didn't quite like, just be like very, very minor niggles that don't take away from the experience at all. First one, battle quotes. They are heavily recycled, and after like a long time playing the game, various things pop up. So you'll realise many of these things. So Lance thinks he's the MVP, Senna is the girl with the goal, whatever the hell that is. You hear quotes like, lots of rare sights, lots of rare doodahs, whatever a doodah is, and just, you know, all these quotes that do get a bit annoying. So if that does annoy you, I think there's a way to turn the voices off in battle. I know some people recommend it. I don't mind it, even as me it did get annoying. Like I don't want to hear like Lance going, he's the MVP after like every 2 fucking battles. Yeah mate, I don't care if you're the MVP mate, I don't care. But yeah. Minor niggle, but even in the quote's still funny. There should have been a bit more variety in lines. The other things like in the previous games, a healer class, like if you wanted to revive someone, you could use anyone, but in this game you have to limit it to healer classes. But you can also, if you can find a really rare accessory, you can equip that so that limit's removed, so you can have an attacker revive, which honestly I wasn't a big fan of. It's easy to adjust to because again, like you can have like healers in your party, and you can also have the 7th like hero character be a healer too, so they can revive. So have like 2 or 3 people revive, maybe a 4th person with an accessory. But yeah, I really wish that wasn't a thing and anyone could revive. Final thing is like a few story decisions which I'm not going into, like because it'd be spoilers. Like nothing to break the game, and it's all well explained and stuff like that. But the story's fine. There's just a few things I personally would not have done, and I would have to explain those in a spoiler video. So. But the story is still very, very well put together. Easily one of the best in an RPG for a very, very long time, especially in Japanese ones. Because a lot of stories tend to be quite cliche, but this one's like, there are some twists I could see coming, but they're the ones that I didn't see coming. They were fantastic and really well done. And it's easy to just drive people in this emotive state and feel sympathy for these characters. And even like cry sometimes, because that's how you know you've got a good game when it makes you cry. Do I recommend this to people? Yes, this game is fantastic, easily one of the best games. You will easily get, not only that, like get your money's worth, but also get a memorable experience. Do I recommend it for newcomers of the series? Yes, because it is standalone, and it basically fixes the flaws of the first 2 games while improving on it in almost every way. Well, basically every way, aside from the few negatives I mentioned earlier. Finally, I do recommend it to people who didn't like the previous 2 games. Also yes, because again, fixes the flaws. A lot of the main issues of gameplay is addressed, so like, you might be wanting to get into it if you have better tutorials explaining the gameplay and stuff. So yeah, I would recommend it. And do I recommend it to people who are new to RPGs? Potentially, if you're willing to spend lots of time in this game and really like get used to the mechanics. Like, if you want a shorter RPG, your first RPG, I wouldn't pick this one, but definitely have it on the list to play next. But in terms of like games, like, do I recommend it to basically anyone who's interested? Yes, as well. I think that's basically it, because I've been at this for a really long time now, and yeah, I love this game. Game of the year, easily highlight for me. A memorable experience that I won't ever forget. Fantastic characters, fantastic story, fantastic gameplay, fantastic basically everything. So yeah, I'm going to do another spoilery video at some point. It'll probably be a lot shorter than this one, where I'll be talking about the specific like plot points and other feelings throughout the game I had that I wasn't a big fan of. That will come in the future, probably next month or whenever, to give more people a chance to complete the game. And that's it for me. So if you like this video and me rambling for nearly 40 minutes about a video game, please like, comment, subscribe, etc. and so on and so forth. Thank you so much for watching and have a lovely day. Bye bye.